And we're talking about two closely related and very important issues. One are the disproportionately high taxes on the municipalities here, and the other is the really discouraging economic growth rate in Kent County. And I think these issues should be of concern to both people who live in Chestertown and throughout the county. And that is on February 11th at 2 o'clock with the county commissioners. And we're really pleased to have been invited by them to discuss these important issues. And particularly in context, last fall, well, I'll simply say they were reluctant to discuss them. And now we had this invitation, and I was especially pleased that Commissioner Price came to one of our workshops. It was a very civil, very productive discussion. We were very appreciative of him joining us. Really want people to envision the kind of the cycle that we're in. Some people will refer to it as a vicious cycle, where high taxes lead to reduced investment. Investors, residents will seek out areas that minimize their cost and improve their opportunities. And that in turn leads for fewer job opportunities in our area, a smaller tax base, and that of course is going to lead to budget deficits as our expenses rise and our incomes don't. And once again, it ends up in higher taxes. Let me go through those, if I can, one by one. In terms of higher property taxes, and your viewership may have heard me talk about the need for a tax differential in Chestertown. We're one of only 3 counties in Maryland that refuses to provide that. They used to say we need more time. It's been 40 years they've said we need more time. And during that time, 20 other counties have gotten on board. Not just for the sake of fairness, but because they recognize it's important for their economic development to be able to attract business to their municipalities. And those municipalities, in turn, can become engines of economic development. We've had 2 studies done by the University of Maryland, one back under Margot Bailey in 1997, demonstrating that Chestertown was overtaxed and underserved. That study, as far as I can tell, was totally ignored. We did the same or similar study last year, and this was after 2 of our county commissioners said they would support such a study. And I'm not sure whether any of them have read it yet. None of them have discussed it with us. So we're quite looking forward to discussing that at the upcoming meeting. And that most recent study, I should emphasize, essentially said that we were overtaxed by 10 to 15%. That means every person in Chestertown. It's not just the property owners, but the renters as well, because the landlords invariably will pass on taxes to their residents or to their businesses that rent from them. So the question is, what happens when you overtax an area? One of the first things we should have noticed, paid attention to, is in the 2020 census, U.S. Census, it showed that Kent County had lost 5% of its population. 5% of the people voted with their feet to go elsewhere in search of jobs, homes, schools, and so on. And it was in particularly that critical age group, the 25 to 35-year-olds, that we so desperately need to help build the future of Kent County. But a second impact, a consequence of those high taxes, is that Kent County has one of the worst economic growth rates anywhere in the state of Maryland. The only county I found with the worst rate was Allegheny County, which has almost been in recession for years. We've got to be able to find a way to turn that around. We've got to be able to build our tax base so that when our expenses rise, we have additional sources of income, of a bigger tax base, and so it does not all have to fall on residential owners. Kent County has wonderful agricultural lands, and it's zoned 89% of its land for agriculture. that means that there's only 11% of that land left really to build a tax base. And unfortunately, Kent County has historically overtaxed that base, which could help us avoid this constant cycle of increasing taxes. Somehow we've got to figure a way to address that. Right now, we've all heard about Kerwin, we've all heard about a need for a new school, and yet the county simply does not have the money for that. We're not prepared for these kinds of things. We're not prepared for another recession. So what's going to happen? Inevitably, we may be able to dip into reserve funds from time to time, but at some point, the county is absolutely going to have to raise taxes again. I remind you, Kent County has the highest property taxes on the Eastern Shore and the highest taxes on municipalities anywhere in the state of Maryland. That's bound to have adverse consequences on our economic development. And that affects not just the people in Chestertown. Everyone in the county will pay a price for that low economic development. In closing, I'd like all of you, many of you can come to these meetings and to begin thinking about asking the county commissioners to in turn ask the Department of Commerce, is it really wise to overburden the one area that has the infrastructure to support development, to overburden those areas with excess taxes, highest taxes in the state? Does that make sense? Ask them also to talk to people in the Department of Planning or Housing and Community Development, whether it's equitable to overtax areas where the incomes are relatively low compared to that in the county. And maybe even to wonder what the Attorney General might think about whether this risks being arbitrary or capricious when you set one flat county tax rate for everyone, regardless of whether the municipality provides its own police, its own streets, its own parks. Chestertown pays over $3 million for these services that otherwise would have been provided for free outside of the town. Now, I know we appreciate everything that the county does for us. We appreciate the schools, all of this. But Jim, 5% of the money that you pay to the county goes to street maintenance, road maintenance out in the county. Did you ever wonder how much they pay for road maintenance in Chestertown? It's nothing, zero. The same is true with money that you pay. Again, about 5% of what you pay in county taxes goes to the sheriff. They provide wonderful service. But the county provides nothing for our police force in Chestertown. And we can go on and on in terms of parks and recreation and this sort of thing. So it's unfair, but it's also an unfairness that hurts everyone in Kent County.